For decades, Craig Melvin has been a steady presence in American living rooms. Calm, thoughtful, measured, the kind of journalist people trust not just for headlines, but for perspective. While the world wakes up to breaking news, uncertainty, and crisis, Craig has been there, composed, empathetic, and grounded. But behind that familiar professionalism lies a quieter truth rarely discussed: the emotional cost of carrying the world's stories day after day. Delivering the news is not simply reading a teleprompter, it's absorbing tragedy before breakfast. It's translating grief, loss, and fear into words that must be clear, respectful, and restrained. Over time, that weight accumulates, and those closest to Craig, especially his wife, Lindsay Czarniak, understand just how heavy that burden can become. Lindsay, a respected journalist in her own right, knows the demands of the profession intimately. She understands what it means to remain composed while processing stories that linger long after the cameras stop rolling. Friends of the couple say there have been moments when Craig returned home quieter than usual, the day's news still resting heavily on his shoulders. Unlike entertainers or commentators, journalists like Craig rarely get the luxury of emotional release on air. The role requires steadiness, even when the stories are devastating. Mass tragedies, loss of life, human suffering on a global scale. Craig has reported them all, not as distant events, but as human realities. Those in their 60s know this kind of quiet endurance well. It mirrors a generation raised to shoulder responsibility without complaint, to keep going, to stay strong, to show up no matter the emotional cost. At home, Lindsay has often been the quiet witness to this invisible strain, not as someone seeking attention, but as a partner offering space, understanding, and balance. Insiders say she has learned to recognize when Craig needs conversation and when silence is the more powerful comfort. There's a misconception that journalists become numb to the news. Those close to Craig say the opposite is true. His empathy is what makes him effective, but it's also what makes the work emotionally taxing. The stories don't end when the broadcast does. They follow him into quiet moments, family dinners, and late nights. Craig has spoken before about the importance of family grounding him, and that grounding has largely come through Lindsay and their children. In a career defined by constant urgency, home has been the place where life slows down, where perspective is restored, where the world's chaos doesn't dictate the rhythm of the day. But even strong foundations are tested. The cumulative effect of covering global crises, social unrest, and personal tragedies can quietly reshape a person. Friends describe Craig as deeply reflective, someone who feels responsibility not just to report the news, but to honor the humanity within it. For Lindsay, watching her husband carry that responsibility hasn't always been easy. Loving someone who bears the emotional weight of the world means accepting that some days they come home changed. Not broken, but heavier, more contemplative, more aware of life's fragility. This is the untold side of journalism that resonates deeply with older audiences. It reflects lives spent working hard, staying composed, and pushing forward even when the heart feels tired. Craig's journey isn't about drama or spectacle. It's about endurance, about commitment, about showing up every day because the work matters. Over the years, Craig Melvin has earned trust not through loud opinions, but through calm presence. That presence, however, comes at a cost few ever see. And Lindsay Czarniak's role in that story is not as a public figure's spouse, but as a partner who understands the unseen weight and helps carry it. This isn't a story of crisis. It's a story of quiet resilience, of two people navigating demanding careers while protecting what matters most, of choosing compassion over detachment, and of understanding that strength doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like consistency. As viewers, we see Craig at his best: articulate, thoughtful, dependable. What we don't always see is the emotional discipline required to remain that way year after year, or the personal toll of delivering the world's hardest truths with dignity. For those watching who have lived long enough to understand responsibility, loss, and perseverance, Craig Melvin's journey feels familiar. It reminds us that behind every calm voice is a human heart, one that feels deeply, even when it must remain steady. And behind that heart, there is often someone quietly making that steadiness possible. If you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with others who appreciate thoughtful stories behind trusted voices. We'll continue bringing you stories that value empathy, depth, and the human experience behind the headlines.